Morning, Trainiacs. Just did a salty little workout there. My goodness. So what I did there was a muscular endurance ride where the main work after a 10-minute warm-up was 8 times 4 minutes on, and the on was like fastest average effort that I could do while keeping cadence super low, close to like 50, 60. That builds up a lot of lactic acid and ouchie in this area here, the lower back. It's a good strength workout too. One thing that I really struggled with for probably 8 years after getting into endurance sports was how to actually build up endurance riding. Like, I could go out for some rides. I did some 90K rides. I did a half Ironman before I figured things out. I did a 120K charity ride, but always my legs would get achy and I would just be shattered for days afterwards. It wasn't just, all right, ride a little bit longer every single week and gradually your endurance will build up. What I want to go through here is 5 tricks that you can use, all of which I think combine to really help build up endurance on the bike. So if you're having issues where the day after a ride you are spent from riding, or towards the 2-hour mark, you just can't feel good. You might be able to do the ride, but you still just don't feel good. How do you end up building up that endurance on the bike? Summer gonna come anytime soon? I'm still in a buff here. It's May. Thanks, Winnipeg. All right, let's get some bike endurance sorted, shall we? So a lot of endurance athletes, whether it be cycling or triathlon, think that before you can start biking a long way, you have to build up to some sort of $5,000 to $10,000 or $15,000 bike. That is not where you start. That's like the icing on the cake. It might take you up maybe 1 mile an hour. And the general rule is that after you've spent about $7,000 on a bike, each additional kilometer per hour improvement costs you around $2,000 to $3,000. But if all you're looking at doing is learning how to ride longer without tiring out, what you need to do is start riding longer. The first place to start with building up your bike endurance is with the 10% rule. But that isn't just where it ends. The 10% rule is that, let's say you can go out and day one you are able to ride 20 kilometers, and that's it, being around 12 miles. Well, the next week you should build up by about 5 to 10% beyond that, so about 22 kilometers, around 13.2 miles. Take the third week to go down about 60% of what your previous high was. Use that as a rest week, so that third week should be just overall generally lighter so that you can absorb those increases in weeks 1 and 2. And then in week 4, come back and go another 5 to 10% longer than your previous longest ride. Now this is going to help you just get over a lot of the mental blocks of getting through those rides, of increasing mileage, because it's such small steps that you're going to be able to get over it. Your body's also going to be able to adapt. You don't want to go up in 20, 30, 40% increments because that's a little bit too much for your body to adapt to week by week. And a big thing to keep in mind is that these long endurance building rides should be a low intensity. If you're using a zone 2 heart rate, you want to be well under zone 2. Like, we're talking somewhere around top of zone 1, bottom of zone 2. This is going to make it easy for you to have enough energy to be able to get through those long rides as you're building up, and you can bring the intensity in later. That's the second thing. So now let's say that you've built up to a long ride, but you want to maybe increase the amount of time that you can spend in that long ride at a higher intensity, or you want to be able to go faster. You want to not just be able to actually go for a long period of time, you want to be able to go fast for a long period of time. What you need for that is you need some HIIT training, some high intensity interval training. And what you're looking to do with this high intensity interval training is build up your FTP, your functional threshold power, the maximum amount of effort that you can put out over the course of 60 minutes, which is a really good correlation with what you can do for longer distance races. And you want to build up your VO2 max, the maximum amount of oxygen that you can process in your lungs every single minute. Those two things are going to raise your ceiling of what your actual fat fast is. And how you do this is by doing intervals anywhere in between about 15 seconds to 2 minutes for FTP building and 2 minutes to about 8 minutes for the VO2 max building. And for now, don't really fuss about whether you're doing 30-second intervals or 6-minute intervals, or you're doing a 1-to-1 work to rest ratio or a 4-to-1 work to rest ratio. As you start getting out, you're gonna absorb the intensity and get faster with whatever you get thrown at. So if you go in and you do a workout that includes these intervals and you think, hey, you know, that was really tough, that's a good thing. It's going to end up making you faster, which is going to improve the amount of time that you can spend at those higher intensities during your long rides, so you're going to be able to ride longer. I gotta go inside. I'm watering up here. All right, genius move. I can just stay in the shade here. Now, about 4 years ago, I had done all of that 10% rule and I was doing intervals, but I would still go out on rides, and when they would pick up and there was that intensity for a long period of time, I would start getting really sore, and I would feel really sore the next day. Now, part of the reason for that is that I wasn't doing any muscular endurance training. Muscular endurance is the ability to perform an action repeatedly over and over and over under tension and not breaking down. It's the idea of making your muscles really durable, so what you throw at them, they can handle without breaking down, without tiring out, and being able to do that motion over and over and over. There's 2 ways that you can build up muscular endurance. The first way is what I was doing this morning. It's with those low gear intense intervals. So we're talking like 50 to 70 RPM, high tension for people who have done it. They say that it's longer than a treadmill minute, maybe even longer than a microwave minute. That doesn't sound physically possible. And by doing intervals with this low intensity, it puts additional strain on the muscles. It takes strain off of the cardiovascular system and puts it on your musculature. By doing that, it's like strength training specifically for your legs, for your bike muscles. It's how you translate strength in the gym to strength and strength endurance on the bike. Start about 70 RPM with intervals of 30 seconds to 1 minute, and then gradually work your way down from 70 RPM to 50 RPM, from 1 minute intervals all the way up to 20-minute intervals, from low intensity up to high intensity as your muscles become more adapted to it and you resist that likelihood of injury. Into here for the muscular endurance strength training portion. Now, when people start thinking, all right, I'm gonna strength train for endurance sports, and that's gonna help, they typically go into the gym and they do strength training and traditional strength training methods. They use machines, they use dumbbell press, they do squats, they do things that you would associate with weightlifting and bodybuilding. But that isn't designed for muscular endurance. You know what is designed for muscular endurance? A kettlebell. When the Russians were using kettlebells originally, the purpose of it wasn't necessarily massive amounts of strength building or bodybuilding or muscle hypertrophy, growing muscles. It was a muscular endurance movement. The kettlebell swing was designed to be high reps so that you build up that lactic acid, you build up that muscular endurance to be able to take those loads over and over and resist fatigue. That's why I really love kettlebells, because A, it builds that muscular endurance, B, it actually improves cardiovascular training more than traditional strength training, so it helps us with our endurance. C, with about 60 to 200 bucks worth of kettlebells, you can get yourself a complete home gym and save money on a gym membership or thousands of dollars worth of equipment at home. And D, it's a safe way to put load on your body because you don't need huge amounts of weight, so you can load yourself really well without putting yourself at risk. Now, the fifth and final thing is to use what I call a timed carb approach. When you're taking carbs upon carbs upon carbs on every single ride or run or swim that you go into, your body starts relying on those carbs and it lowers its ability to burn fat as fuel. Commonly, most Western people who eat a Western diet, even if it is healthy, just tends to be rich in processed foods and rich in carbs. So they'll burn roughly around 0.4 grams of fat stores every single minute. Now, if you use a timed carb approach, where every time you go and do a low intensity ride, you restrict carbs before and during, and I don't want you to go out and do these things fasted, and I don't want you to go into it as like, all right, Taren says I gotta restrict carbs, so I'm gonna go out and do my next 4-hour ride without carbs. Build your way up from a 90-minute ride without carbs before or during to 145 to 2 hours to 2.5 hours gradually. And what's going to happen is you can increase the amount of fat stores that you burn at like 1.6 grams of stored body fat that's getting burned per minute. This is 4 times more energy. And when you end up doing the math of how many calories you start with, how many calories you can safely eat during a ride, and then how much body fat you are turning into energy every single minute, then you look at how many calories you're burning every single hour. If you don't have that nice ability to burn fat as fuel, you are just going to run out of calories. And that's where you start getting a lot of the achy legs. You start getting people that have muscular failure and in an Ironman can't really run at all because their muscles are just shutting down. Their body is shutting down because there isn't enough energy on board to actually do the task. So I'm not saying go keto or low carb. I call it a timed carb approach, where before low intensity rides, you still eat. During low intensity rides and runs, you still eat, but you just restrict the amount of carbohydrates. You take a protein and fat source for those workouts. Simple as that. Have all the carbs after. And in my case, it wasn't until I ended up getting that increased ability to burn fat as fuel that I started feeling like I could ride for hours and hours. And at any point in time, somebody could say, hey, do you want to ride for 3 hours? Yeah. Do you want to ride for 5 hours? Yeah, I can do that at any point in time without having to build up to it because I am not running out of energy. So with all of those 5 things in place, I guarantee that you can get up to a point where you can go out for training rides, for rides with friends, for rides in a race where you go out and you hammer for long periods of time and you don't feel like you're going to fall apart during or after. You're not just hanging on for dear life. And this is when riding gets really, really fun. Now, if you want to know how to do this, if you want a training plan that is designed around all this, that gives you indications of what workouts to take, what nutrition, how long you should be riding, a safe build-up, how to increase the intensity, how to put in those 30-second intervals and the 6-minute intervals, and all of that is done for you. You can use our training app. You go to app.mymotive.com. You can try it for free for 14 days, and if you like it after, you can use it for all of your year-round training as well as your race preparation training. That's all for today, Trainiacs, and if you aren't already subscribed, hit the subscribe button below. Later.